conductor, docent, tour guide, dance instructor, bottle washer, you name it, I get to be it for the next approximately 20 minutes as we make a grand circle journey of Disneyland. We'll be sharing some stories about the car, the railroad. And we won't be listening to him because I want to hear me talk. While the train's in motion, we do ask everybody to be seated. Do we have people that have actually been on here before? Okay, keep your hands really high. For those of you that don't have your hands up, watch out for them. They're the two-timers. Aha! Lilly Bell's actually kind of a special car. It's one of the original cars that sat here when we opened up Disneyland on July 17th, 1955. It didn't look like this. It was a bright yellow car, as the whole train was very bright yellow. It was called Retlaw 1. Each car had its own name. This was the car that sat at the end, and it was kind of unique because of its seating. This was known as the Grand Canyon car. And it had windows all the way down, didn't have the paneling, didn't have the stained glass. And the inside of the car was like this. A little bit different than what it is now.
It's like a set more beach.
That's what she looked like. So it was just rows of seats, rows of seats. Now all of the other cars, except for the very front car, sat like buses. You know, two here, 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 two here. And it was a really inefficient train. Really inefficient for loading. We would send people in this door and out that door. It would take forever to load the train. This train was actually a little bit easier. People would come along. But it was funny because when we opened up the diorama of the Grand Canyon in 1958, Walt took a bunch of people in this car, and that actually was the demise and the savior of the car all at the same time. And we'll get into that in just a second. I want to tell you just a little bit. There was another train that sat here, which was at Frontierland. Now, the Frontierland station originally was placed just about where Haunted Mansion is at now. And that station is the station that's across from New Orleans. It has the annoying teletype all day long.
Yeah, I know.
You know what it says?
Yeah.
Yeah.
To all of those who come to this happy place, welcome. Disneyland is your land. It's Walt Disney's opening day speech. We just do it in a really annoying way. And one train would sit at a station while the other train would go all the way around the park and come back to that station. When they would come back to the station, they would ring down to the other station and say, we're back. And that other train then would come along, or would depart and go around. And you can see there's enough room along here for siding tracks. And the same thing at Main Street. So only one train operated at a time. Is it stuffy in here?
Yes.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Let's get some air in here. You don't mind being freezing cold, do you? And if I can, I'll reach back in here and get a little air.
Okay.
And I'll do one back here. You okay? Those windows look familiar? School buses. That's what they used actually to model those. Okay, now I talked about the diorama being the savior and the demise of this car. And it really was. What had happened is Walt was really excited about the Grand Canyon. It was the largest continuous hand-painted canvas in the world. It had taken over 3,000 man-hours to paint over 300 gallons. A lot of effort had gone into that. There's 47 animals in there. And Walt was really proud of the display. He thought it was very innovative for the time. In 1958, it was. He had this whole place filled, and Walt was sitting about here. And they departed in what was a special loading at where the Tomorrowland area is at. And they pulled into the Grand Canyon, and everybody that was sitting over here in these bench seats did what? Stood up and turned around so they could see, which was okay. But everybody over here got what? A view of a different Grand Canyon. Walt said, bad show. let's not run this car anymore. We'll only take it out when I want special guests, or we've got, but it doesn't, I don't want you to load guests in there on a regular basis. It's just too bad a show. And so they would drag it around, and nobody could get in it, nobody could get in it, nobody could get in it. And finally the engineer said, you know, it's dead weight. How about if we just park it at the roundhouse? And that's what they did. And they parked it at the roundhouse. And, well, the termites began to eat on it. And it was a wonderful feast for the termites. They really, really loved it. And along came this gentleman that kind of fell in love with the enclosed car trains. And they heard that Disney was looking for another engine. And so he approached Disney and said, I've got this proposition. I have an engine that I'll trade you for all of those cars. And they said, all of those cars? All 5 of them? He said, yep. And so they made a deal. They traded an engine for the 5 cars. But this was the 6th engine, or 6th car. It didn't get included in the deal. So because it got stacked back in the roundhouse, it wasn't included, and it just sat back there and was termite. Lo and behold, Walt dies, and time goes by, and it's coming up close to the bicentennial. The manager of the roundhouse has this really neat idea, and he approaches the Disneys and says, how about we take that old car of your dad's and remodel it into a private parking car for the bicentennial? And Diane, the oldest daughter, said, tell me a little bit more about that. You could do that? And then came over to this guy's name and said, we can do anything we want. There's no rules for this. As long as we don't change the wheelbase, we can do anything we want. And so Diane says, how about the car that Dad always was looking for Mom? And Ken was a very smart person, realizing that the Disneys were the ones that were going to control whether or not it was funded, and said, we can do that. So they set it to work. They took the old car, and they redid the cap, and the termite damage that came in along, they put the paneling, the gold leaf, the stained glass, the fixtures. They went all out. They took the benches that were in here, and they chopped them down, and reupholstered them. So these are the old benches that have just been shortened and made into sofas. They took carpeting from the original apartment, the Disney apartment above the fire station, and put it in here. Now this is not the original carpet. The carpet has actually been replaced 3 times. And there, Walt's caboose, his handmade caboose, sat about here in a special case. That's now up in the Disney Museum, Family Museum in San Francisco. And that chair, that table, and that love seat were all rattan, which was very indicative of the period of time that they were decorated. And Lillian went in here and said, I love it, but I don't like that rattan. That has to go. So it just happened that we were also the operating company of the Queen Mary. And they were exiting out furniture. So at auction, the chair, the table, and the love seat, we got from Queen Mary, and we have reupholstered it to match. So it comes from a couple of different sources. Now, Lillian loved to take people in here all the time. She was coming into the park 4 to 5 times a week just to ride in the car. She loved it so much. And then she stopped coming and just started calling and saying, you know, would you let Mildred ride in the car? And Mildred would show up, and we'd let her ride in the car. Of course, then people started showing up and saying, Lillian said we could ride in the car. And we looked and said, right. Because if we put them in the car and she really had them, we were in trouble. And we would be just as much in trouble if we said no, and they were authorized. So we'd have to call somebody 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 that might be able to call somebody who could call somebody who could call somebody that could call somebody that might be able to call again to Lillian. I mean, it was really a long telephone connection. Then we'd get it back in reverse, either yes or no. And then we'd have to go to the roundhouse, which will point out to the roundhouse. It's just the other side of Small World here on the, there's a break. I'll have you look through these windows and show you the 2-story roundhouse. Okay, we'd go send the train back there, back it in, hook up the Lilly Bell, okay, and bring it back out. Now that would take hours. Wasn't really efficient. So Diane jumped into gear again, and she gave her mom tickets. Said, Mom, if you're going to send somebody to Disneyland to ride the train, give them one of these. Those are the tickets that you have in your hand. If you look at the tickets, there's a couple of really neat things about it. Originally when this car sat there, I said it was the car that sat on the Retlaw. It was the Grand Canyon car. It was car 106. It's still car 106. And so if you look on the back of the ticket, you'll see the back of the ticket has the car 106 number right over here. So and if you look on the front of the ticket, you'll see the ticket number, which is the bicentennial car, because it still is the bicentennial car. It's the Lilly Bell, but it came out as the bicentennial car when it was remodeled, and it still is. Now it's been remodeled twice, once converting it to the Lilly Bell, and then once midway through because we had a little problem. And every time somebody's ever worked on it, behind this panel is their signature. Just a little bit of trivia. Anybody who's ever worked on this car has signed the back of this panel. Okay. Also, if you look right here, what do you see right there?
Hidden Mickeys.
Right there. See the Mickeys?
Yeah.
See the Mickeys? See them right there?
Yeah.
Do you see them?
Yep.
Do you guys see them?
You have to show us a picture.
No, I don't. They found them. Look at it.
Oh, yeah.
Right there. Right there. Right there. Hidden Mickeys. Oh, you're standing on a Mickey. Quick.
They do the same thing with their brand.
Lilly, I mean, she really did take a lot of people in here. Walt took a lot of people in here too. The very first day that the car rolled out, when it was car 106 in the bright yellow, on opening day, there were 2 future presidents that rode in this car. Do you have any idea who they were? Or are?
Richard Nixon
Ronald Reagan.
and Ronald Reagan.
Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan. They were both very close friends. Ronald Reagan was one of the MCs of opening day. Okay, as we roll to the other side of the Small World, we're going to come to a crossing. And I want, as much as possible, folks to look through here. And the road will angle back a little bit. So look through the opening and you'll see a 2-story roundhouse. I mentioned when we opened up, trains were Retlaw 1 and Retlaw 2. They weren't operated by Disney. They were owned and operated by a company called Retlaw and leased back to Disneyland. Retlaw is Walter spelled backwards.
Guess who?
Now Roy had convinced Walt that Disneyland may not be a financial success. And if by chance they had to file bankruptcy, Walt didn't want to lose his trains. So he started the whole company just to protect them if they did. If you look back through, should be right there.
Right there.
Okay, that's where we keep the trains. Okay, on the top are the monorails. On the bottom are the trains. Because Retlaw ran both the trains, the monorail, and then they also ran the Mark Twain. Now it all changed in 1986. Retlaw gave up all of its holdings in Disneyland. Picked up that. Retlaw is actually the company that is for the Disney family holdings. They own all of the land, things like that. It's really, really wealthy. I mean, it's kind of rich, but you know, so it still does exist. The other thing too is this little thing here. You guys can stand up. That's our switch. They're gonna start rolling. So I'm trying to get you back down, but this is our switch. What'll happen is when we go to put a train away, the train will pull up just a little bit past this switch. And it'll pull up just a little bit farther. The conductor will run back, throw a pin, throw that switch over, jump back on the back of the train, give it 3 whistles, and the train will back all the way into that roundhouse that you took a look at. I talked about the guests that Lillian took on the train. Well, it just so happened that the very first world leader that she got to host in here was a gentleman by the name of Emperor Hirohito. You know what he was the emperor of?
Japan.
Japan. Some really interesting things took place. It turns out that on October 6th of 1976, he was on the West Coast, part of a 22-day stay in the States. It was his West Coast journey. That day was really kind of special for him and kind of special for us. It turns out that when he was growing up, he had 2 boyhood heroes. John Wayne. You think of the movies that John Wayne did, it was either cowboy movies or war movies. In the war movies, the enemy always was the Japanese. Always. But yet, John Wayne was his hero. Okay? And his other hero was Mickey Mouse. And on October 22nd, he happened to get to meet both of his boyhood dreams. He was heroes. He went and had lunch with John Wayne at the LA Athletic Club. When he was done, he came here and spent just 90 minutes in the park. About an hour of that was with Lillian here in the car. One of the things that he did that really touched Lillian was he had Googled or something, I don't know where he learned this, but that Walt had died of smoking. Lillian hated him smoking, but it went a little bit deeper than that. See, Walt wasn't allowed to smoke in the house. If Walt was to smoke in the house, he had to smoke in the library. And the door had to be shut. But the last thing Lillian wanted to do was to walk into that library when Walt was smoking. So he had to wear his smoking jacket, so he didn't stink. And if he wasn't smoking, that smoking jacket would hang outside, right by the front door. Or it would be hung by the front door, just on the inside, but the outside of the library. That way she could see if the smoking jacket was there. If it was there, she could go in. If it wasn't there, he's smoking, don't go in there. Well, the emperor learned this, and so he came with a gift for Lillian, actually a gift for Walt, who had already died, and posthumously gave Walt a handmade silken smoking jacket. And in honor of that, she hung it here. Now, that's not it.
Wouldn't be.
But just as tradition, we keep it here because she really, really appreciated it. And that was part of the tradition. Also, this screen that's here, this is a replica. But what she would do in the Lilly Bell, or in this car and in the apartment, she had 2 of these. But they had more of a lacy kind of a thing. And she would, if Walt was smoking, she'd place it between her and Walt. So he couldn't blow smoke her away. Which is kind of neat. Okay, well, after he did the tour here with Lillian, and he absolutely loved the Grand Canyon. It turns out that he was into natural sciences, had studied in the States, and he was in love with the Grand Canyon. So it was really kind of a special trip for him. When they were done, they went over to Sea Hall, and they had a big ceremony. They signed, the golden guest book, the ones that they bring out every now and then for like world leaders, really special guests. They had a big ceremony. And while the ceremony was going on, he dispatched one of his aides to go purchase the best Mickey Mouse watch money could buy. And Lillian was a little bit put off because he had done this nice gesture, and she says, "No, I'll get it for you. See, I kind of own this place." So it's not a big deal. I can get that for you. And he says, "No, I've got to purchase it. It must be purchased." And so he did. He purchased the Mickey Mouse watch. And it was really, really neat. Is from that day forward, he wore it every day of his life. Every single day. And when he went on to eternal life, he insisted on taking it with him. So he wore it and he returned it. A Mickey Mouse watch from a world leader. I mean, it's kind of unique, right? Every time I come across it, I find that just absolutely fascinating. It has nothing really directly to do with it. Just a little sidebar that I find fascinating. Now we're going to head into the diorama. Diorama itself is in 2 parts. The first part is 1958, the Grand Canyon, which actually kind of was the turning point for this car. And the other portion of that is the Primeval World, which comes from the 1964 World's Fair. It came to us in 1965. Disney did a lot of things at the World's Fair. It was part of the Ford exhibit, which was the Skyway at the time. Not the Skyway that we had here, but there it was a journey through time in a 1964 Mustang convertible. Okay. And so the journey of time started with the dinosaurs, or Primeval World. Well, eventually, we picked up that Skyway. You can hear us, but people mover. We didn't bring the Mustangs. We used different vehicles. But also at that same time, you had great moments with Mr. Lincoln that came from there. And Small World. Just some of the things that came from that. Any questions?
Yes, sir. What was the year of that World Fair?
64.
World's Fair in New York. Which was the World's Fair that was the unofficial World's Fair because it lasted more than a year. And they were only sanctioned for a year from the interaction of 64 to 65 that was in New York, and they took advantage of it.
And Smoking Jacket is almost an exact replica.
Nowhere near the quality.
But its design
It was a
looks
black
silk.
silken robe. They were out here in 1958 when they came in. That's the other thing is, the tickets that you have, if you go to the Disney Family Museum in San Francisco, you can purchase them. Now, they're not good for rides on the Lilly Bell, they're just souvenirs. And they're a mere $65.
These tickets.
The tickets. If you go to the Carolwood Pacific Park, they also sell them as fundraisers. Not good for anything other than souvenirs. And they're good for nothing other than that souvenir at the mere price of $55. And you just got them for free. A little bit of trivia. How much did it cost to come into Disneyland on opening day?
25 cents. No, opening.
$1. $1 to come into Disneyland. And to ride the train full circle costs how much?
Dime?
Nickel.
It was 50 cents. So by my calculation, each one of you paid $100 to get in today. I'll be collecting the $50 that you extra. Good luck.
What was the train that Walt used to sit on and drive?
That was the Lilly Bell.
That was
There's an
the-
exact replica in the Main Street office.
is there?
Engine 1, which is the engine that's pulling this, is the same engine. That's a 1/8 scale. Okay,
Yeah.
we're a narrow gauge, 3 foot, 5/8 scale. But it's the same blueprints that made the model. And that actually came from CP-173, which is the Central Pacific 173. The train that they sent around the Cape in order to connect the rails across the country. It was destroyed, and Walt had fallen in love with the train. Never got to see it. And when his friends learned that, they built the model for him, which got him hooked on trains, which turned into the full-scale railroad. Any other questions?
We're back.
We have about a minute to get pictures, questions, anything like that. And then in order to stay on schedule, I have to kick you out of here.
Thanks a lot for the tour.
Thank you.